Friday morning. We've had quite a few days like that lately, and well, this one continues a weather pattern that we just as soon not have to deal with, but we gotta, and so that's something we can talk with Mr. Pollock about today. Not going to ask him to change the weather, thankfully, because I don't know that even Bob has that power. But let's visit with Bob Pollock this morning from Indiana County's Extension, and our visit is presented by Marcus & Mack, voted best law firm and best personal injury lawyer 3 years in a row in the Best of Indiana County contest. Visit them online at marcusandmack.com. This cold, wet weather obviously interfering with growing season.
Yes.
And the ability to even put your garden in. I don't even have the soil turned over yet because it's just too muddy.
Yeah, looks like it'll be a few days before it's any less muddy.
A few days.
Maybe a week.
Yeah. Yeah. So what do you do?
Yeah, we were starting to look pretty good there, and then took a turn cold and wet.
Yeah.
But that's what we normally have to deal with anyhow.
So if you are delayed in putting in your garden by weeks, because it's going to be weeks before you're able to get your garden in, when normally it would be in by Memorial Day, does that affect then the growing season if it turns into the typical summer around here, which lately has been hot and dry?
Not so much for the warm season crops, because really we still have time for all the warm season crops. It's those cool season crops, those early crops that like the cooler weather, that we've missed the window on.
So your broccoli,
it's tougher. It's a lot more challenging to grow those because just like this weather changed, it'll probably flip back and, we'll get warm and we might get dry. Those types of plants don't like the cooler conditions. So it's more, that's why we like to grow those cool season crops in the spring and then come in late summer, plant those to then get another fall crop out of those because they don't like the hot, dry summers. A lot of times they'll bolt, meaning instead of growing a nice broccoli head, they'll send a stalk up through the middle, trying to go to seed because, they're under stress. These are not the conditions that we want to grow in.
So they'll look more like they would after you take that first initial head off when they just start shooting up one or two.
Yes. and maybe even worse. So we may have to adapt, as we always do in agriculture. And, okay, well, what's coming next? If we missed our window for these crops, then let's go into the next round. So we get into our warm season crops, our tomatoes and the vine crops. We still have time for vine crops too. So it's nothing we shouldn't get too worked up about it yet.
Okay. All right. So
until we can get the soil worked up.
Talk us down off that ledge.
Yeah.
I noticed the other day that the neighbors' grapevines, my grapevines, they're not blooming as normally they would. They're not taken off like typically they would. They're getting their leaves, but they're taking their sweet time about that.
Yeah. And that's okay. And a lot of times we catch up. We end up catching up anyway. We get in this big rush and we want to get things in. And same thing with flowers now. Just been cool enough, and depending on where you live, it might be even cooler. So you're just sitting on them till conditions get a little bit better, and you feel a little more confident that we're not going to have a freeze or frost, or they'll get damaged. Because it doesn't necessarily take a freeze or a frost for some of those very warm season types of flowers. They just don't handle, under 50 degrees real well. We might stunt them, set them back, and they may never recover from that. So
the azaleas did poorly this year compared to last year. Last year they were just amazing. This year, okay, but not great. The roses are greening up nicely, but it might take them a little while longer to bud out too, right?
Yeah, it's just cooler temperatures, cloudy weather, wet weather. That just slows everything up. You're right, they're still coming out. It just don't think they're not going to be okay. There still could be plants. I noticed on some of my hydrangeas that there was more winter injury there than what first appeared to be. So I did an initial trimming to take the dead wood off. I didn't overdo it, but because things did start to leaf out, but then some of that I left on there, those leaves were obviously the tissue in the buds, the leaf tissue in the buds were damaged by the winter temperatures and conditions we had, and so they aren't fully coming out. So I had to go back in and touch those up, cut some back farther. Some canes didn't have anything on till you got down to the bottom, where we had a little bit of snow cover there for the winter.
Yeah.
So you just got to look at things. Sometimes things look okay, and then when they really do leaf out, like your tree, or not leaf out completely,
Like my other tree.
like your other tree, that you start to say, "Ooh, there might have been something's happened there."
Yeah.
And you might have to do some, just some update pruning to remove the dead wood, and then go from there.
Yeah, yeah. Let's take a caller here this morning on Indiana in the Morning, find out what's going on in their plant life. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm calling about my lilac. My husband put urea around the lilac last year, and he gave some to my son, and he put it around his lilac. And this year, there's absolutely no flowers on it at all. And the next door neighbor, who lives just 10 feet across the road, their lilac is just blooming. It was blooming, just full of blooms. And we're wondering if that was the cause of no flowers, the wrong type of fertilizer.
All right.
Is your son's in the same condition? It didn't get any blooms either?
Correct. Uh-huh.
But otherwise, everything's leafing out okay?
Yes, it looks beautiful. A lot of green leaves. It looks healthy, but just absolutely no flowers on it. And the same thing with my son. But the next door neighbor is the same thing.
Isn't that the way
his is full of flowers. It was
you do
beautiful
something, you
this
try
year.
to make an improvement, and
I think I sense a cause and effect here.
Well, there's potentially one here. So urea, 4600 is a fertilizer, and it's a very concentrated form of nitrogen. So we can over-apply that. Nitrogen causes growth in plants unless we put too much on, and then we can kill things with it. We can kill grass. Sometimes urea could be sprinkled on sidewalks in the winter months for ice, because it'll help melt ice. But if we get too much, we will burn, and that's what happens. It burns the tissue. So if we get too much, we can actually burn a little bit of roots down in the ground, or depending on how much we applied, we can cause some excessive growth to occur. Now, I don't know that how much over application you did. It might have just, because I'm still surprised that you didn't get some blooms in there, even with that application. But spreading that on there and I don't know if you measured it out or kind of had a thought in mind about how much urea I should put on this plant based on the plant size and everything.
No, he probably overdid it.
But we could have put enough on there, because sometimes a little looks good and more looks better. And maybe we should have held off on I know there's a granule here and a granule there, but we have a lot more leeway when we use a 1010 or because there's a lot less nitrogen in it. So we may have just kicked that thing into growing, and it grew at the expense of making buds.
So do you think next year that urea will have leached out of the soil and it's going to be okay, or is there something I should put on there to help it, the bloom?
So do you think it will recover next year?
Yeah, because you've got a good green plant. It leafed out. There's no dead in it. So those effects of that will wear off.
Good. Okay.
And then what we want it to do is get buds, because those buds are made during the late summer into fall, the flower buds for next year. as are the leaf buds. But if we kick that thing into making growth, we can do that at the expense of flower development.
You doke. Well, thank you. I appreciate your advice. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Wait till next year. That's going to look beautiful. Maybe not so much this year, but that's okay. So in that case, there's probably nothing she can do to get any blooms this year because
that's done.
That window is closed.
Yep.
And she doesn't really need to neutralize anything that he's done with too much of an application this year. Just wait for it to
just let it work its way out of the system. Yeah.
All right.
The plant will use some of that, which it has, and then also some of that will not get used and may leach out, or other plants around it will use it. We have to be careful with those types of fertilizers because they are a more concentrated form, and we got to calculate, okay, here's how much actual nitrogen is in there, and here's how much the plant actually needs, and then match that up, weigh out the rate that we need to use. Because you can use urea on your yard, too, as a nitrogen fertilizer.
Yeah.
But again, you can't look at it will not say on the urea bag how much, if you're trying to get a pound to a pound and a quarter of actual nitrogen to apply per each 1,000 square feet on your yard, you got to do some math.
All right, and you might burn it up a little bit before.
And you might, and otherwise.
Okay, all right.
And it's hard to spread. When you spread fertilizer, you see these granules out there, but unless you have a known amount, you're guessing at what that concentration level should look like out there.
All right, here's one thing that we had on our This Week in Science today. I don't know if you heard that. A study found that plants crank out more nectar when they hear bees buzzing. So the plants, when the bees buzz, the plants can hear that. So farmers might be able to play buzzing sounds, they say, to help their crops pollinate and not actually need the bees. I don't know if you wanted to react to that in any way or all.
I don't know.
But there you go.
Might work for a while till the plant doesn't get pollinated enough.
The plant figures out, hey, that's a fake. That's AI bees. That's not real bees. All right.
Kind of like we play sounds to keep some of the wildlife away, and it works for a while.
Yeah, and then
until it doesn't.
Out it's just the Bee Gees. All right. Thank you, Bob.
You're welcome.
I have no idea where this segment is going to go each week. It's the voice of Indiana County. It's WCCS 101.1 FM, AM 1160, WCCSradio.com. We are just about 2 minutes away from 8 o'clock. Fox News comes your way then, and then we follow that with news from our WCCS newsroom with Josh. It's 2 away from 8. It's Indiana in the Morning on WCCS.